Hello, this is Marvel Matt, and today we're going to be talking about Monsters Unleashed. Monsters Unleashed, of course, is the big new event from Marvel to kick off their comics in 2017. 2016 in Marvel was, I would say, pretty lackluster. They had some events that they wanted to be big, but they turned out to be not so big. Some people did like them. I don't think they were terrible, but they definitely were eclipsed by what DC did with Rebirth. And Marvel hasn't been eclipsed by anything that DC has done in a while. Even when DC did New 52, I would say that Marvel held its own through that entire period, and very quickly, within a matter of months, was back on track and back on top. It doesn't seem that way with DC Rebirth. DC Rebirth is much stronger, and what Marvel did was they responded with Civil War 2, which as soon as you put a 2 at the end of something, I think you immediately create a certain amount of yawns and fans, like, oh, it's a second one, okay. You know, the original concept was original, and now we're playing it out again. So, and that might have been somewhat of a factor. I think the Civil War 2 also came out after the Civil War movie, and generally the people I talk to say that comics that tie into films do better when they come out before the film, during that phase where people are really anticipating the movie and they want to get into the movie, but they can't get to the movie because it's not out yet, and that is a time to launch that tie-in comic, and they did not do that. Civil War 2 came out later, and then it seemed to kind of just drag on and on and on and on. Was it terrible? No. Was it great? No. It's just going to be kind of one of these big forgotten events for Marvel. I also think that Marvel is suffering from a bit of big event fatigue, and which people might find funny because here I'm talking about a big event. This event, though, I'm excited for. I think it's actually really cool. It's a bit of a unique concept, and it also is going to bring back a bunch of characters, I'm going to call them characters for now, that were around before Marvel was Marvel. And by that I mean these are giant monsters and creatures that existed in what was called Atlas Comics. Atlas Comics is what Marvel was before it became Marvel. Some people don't know this, but once upon a time, Marvel was the little guy, and DC was huge. And Marvel was the upstart. And Marvel did not start doing superhero stories really until the 1960s. And the big comic that they created with Stan Lee at the helm was Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four then caught on fire. And of course, later within that decade, Spider-Man came out, and Spider-Man became huge. And that set up Marvel's superhero phase. Before that, though, Marvel was much more of a horror comics publisher. They also did Western comics. So they did not do superheroes. Not until much later. And because of that, though, they have a whole bunch of stories about these monsters. And there's a lot of these monsters, and really not many of them have appeared in the comics since then. They have made sporadic appearances, but not a lot. Probably the biggest known monster to come out of that period is Groot after Guardians of the Galaxy. Groot was brought back, I believe, for Howling Commandos. It was a S.H.I.E.L.D. division made up of monsters, and from there he spun his way into Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Guardians of the Galaxy became a movie. The Guardians of the Galaxy story that I think really kicked things off was the one by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning when they re-engineered that group. I don't know if anyone realized how much of a lightning in a bottle that story was, but that team really has captured people's imaginations and looks great on film, and now Groot is a superstar because of it. Other big monsters that people might know, there's not very many. Some have made some appearances in the Fantastic Four books since then. I think probably the most recognizable monster from that period are kind of the newer ones that were created to battle superheroes. And that includes a monster like Fin Fang Foom, who was a big-time Iron Man and occasionally Fantastic Four villain. He's probably actually the biggest Iron Man villain that has yet to appear in the films. I think people always thought that he was too out there to tie him into kind of the very grounded and realistic Iron Man films. But now that Iron Man is kind of out there with the adventures, who knows? Maybe he will make an appearance in another movie sometime soon. I think it'd actually be really fun to see Iron Man battle a giant dragon alien. So I kind of like to talk about this Monsters Unleashed, the characters that are in it, why it's cool. I want to talk about some of my favorite monsters, and because I think a lot of people don't know these monsters, and there's a lot of fun little concepts in here that are different. I think one of the fun things about these old classic monsters is they come from a very different time than America is today, and there were different fears and different worries that were embedded into these monsters, and that's part of what makes them kind of seem fresh now. So, I think one of the things to talk about is just the characters and who this event's gonna impact. So, the idea of Monsters Unleashed is that all of a sudden, these giant Godzilla, King Kong-sized monsters have landed on Earth all over the place, and they just keep landing. Impact after impact after impact of these giant, big, bad monsters. They're out to cause destruction, and the superhero teams are all battling them, but no matter what, the monsters just keep coming. And coming and coming and coming. So the heroes are struggling with what's going on, where are these monsters coming from, how do we really put an end to what's going on here, and how do we defeat all of these monsters. Right away in Monsters Unleashed, you see the Avengers battle a giant monster. The series then shows the Inhumans battling a monster. The Champions are battling a monster. The Guardians of the Galaxy are battling a monster. And the X-Men are battling a monster. All in kind of a different city across the globe. But all of them, in a way, are kind of come to the horrible idea of realizing that this one giant monster that they're battling is not the only one. And even as they're battling that one, they are seeing more monsters land just in their immediate proximity. And of course, news broadcasts are going off about monsters landing all over the globe. And those teams cover kind of the most well-known characters in Marvel, and their battles with each of those superhero teams are going to be covered, I believe, in kind of these spin-off comics. Like, we'll get an Avengers comic that focuses on their battle with the monsters. There'll be a Guardians of the Galaxy one. There'll be a Spider-Man one. And I assume there'll be also an X-Men one. I'm not sure about that. Yes, all new X-Men. We'll focus on that. But the main focus in the series is not going to be on those characters on the superhero teams. The three main characters that are really going to drive forward the main plot of Monsters Unleashed, the story, are going to be Luna Lafayette, Moon Girl, and her partner in crime, Devil Dinosaur, Elsa Bloodstone, who is a monster hunter, also coincidentally created by Dan Abnett and Andy Landing, who had done all that work with Groot and Guardians of the Galaxy. They strike again with this character. And another character, Kai Kawadi, who is also known as Kid Kaiju, who's kind of a young teenager who appeared briefly in Totally Awesome Hulk. And I think he was created in Totally Awesome Hulk specifically to appear in this series. So, those are the main three. Luna Lafayette, Elsa Bloodstone, Kai Kawadi. I'm not saying Peter Parker right now. I'm not saying Hulk, Bruce Banner. I'm not saying Tony Stark. These are not very well-known names, but I will say all these characters are pretty cool. And they're kind of interesting, and they're going to, I think, work well for this story. Luna Lafayette is this young genius girl who befriends the Devil Dinosaur character, and she's been running around town with him in the series Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. It's been a very good series. I'd say it's more of a kid-focused series, but she's a fun character, and she's going to be the brainiac, the intelligentsia that helps figure out and unravel what is going on, and maybe can find a way to stop it. Elsa Bloodstone is a monster hunter in a long line of monster hunters. Her father was Ulysses Bloodstone, who thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, I don't know. He was basically a near-immortal monster hunter who got this bloodstone embedded into his body that made him immune to vampire bites and also near-immortal. He then had Elsa at some point. Elsa inherited some of his bloodstone in her own blood, and likewise has a fragment of it hanging around her neck. She also has her father's notes from monsters and prophecies about monsters, and she has all these, like, almost a library of monster artifacts and whatnot. She's gonna be researching, coming at this event at the angle of this prophecy that these monsters were gonna come, kind of a Armageddon type monster scenario, and she's looking at who is this mysterious big bad that could be behind it all. What is this great evil behind all these monsters? And then we have Kei Kawadi, Kid Kaiju, who is this young kid who, if he draws monsters, they are summoned to him. They come to him. And what is not entirely clear is if he can control those monsters or not. I'd say, based off some of the pages here, it seems like he can control them somehow, in some way. But I'm not clear how that works yet. It's also implied, at least in the beginning parts of the story, that he may have something to do with the event as it's going on. You see all these monsters landing all over the world, and you see this pencil drawing monsters, which is Kay drawing all these monsters on sheets of paper. But then on the end of the book, and I don't want to give anything away, it's like he's not causing these big things. He has a different motive, potentially a more mysterious motive, but likely he's going to try to help. And so those are the three main heroes that are going to have to battle through all this horde of monsters that have been unleashed. And I think they're good characters. I think immediately it's going to make for an interesting story to have, and there's going to be some newness here. The concept is cool. The concept is fun. You're mixing some old monsters with some new monsters, and you have these heroes who are all interesting and different, and you're going to have a fun event. It also doesn't feel like, even though you have all these teams battling monsters everywhere, the main story has a focus really on these three characters. And just right there, it just doesn't feel like it's gotten too big, and it's pretty well contained. The art in the book is also really good, and I immediately just liked it. You have a little bit changes in style, particularly when you go to like Elsa Bloodstone style. It goes to more of a dark, like Tomb Raider, Raiders of the Lost Ark type of vibe. It was all very cool though. It totally fit the story, and I think people are generally going to like it. And my one worry, I'd say, so far with the series is that people are going to like this and want this a lot more than they did Civil War 2, and it might catch comic book stores off guard, because they might be thinking, oh my